The sky above New Tokyo burned orange and red. Admiral Yuki Tanaka stood on the bridge of the UNS Defiance and watched her world die. The main screen showed Earth from orbit. Beautiful blue oceans were now black with ash. Green forests were gone. Cities that once held billions of people were nothing but fire and smoke. She was 62 years old. She had served in the United Nations Space Fleet for 40 years. She had seen many terrible things in her life, but nothing had prepared her for this moment. Nothing could prepare anyone for watching their home burn. "Admiral," said a young officer behind her. His voice was shaking. "We are receiving the final transmission from Earth Command." Tanaka did not turn around. She could not look away from the screen. "Put it through," she said. The speakers filled with screams. Millions of voices crying out at once. The sound of buildings falling. The deep rumble of Convergence harvester ships moving across the land. And then a single voice clear through the noise. "This is General Morrison, Earth Command. To all surviving human vessels, Earth has fallen. I repeat, Earth has fallen. Do not attempt rescue. There is no one left to rescue. Save yourselves. Save humanity. Morrison out." The transmission ended. The bridge was silent. Tanaka could hear her own heart beating. She could hear the soft hum of the ship's engines. She could hear someone crying quietly in the corner. 18 months. That was all it had taken. 18 months for the Convergence to destroy everything humanity had built over thousands of years. The alien coalition had come from the darkness between stars with one simple message. Humans were a disease, and they were the cure. First, they destroyed the outer colonies. Jupiter Station fell in 3 days. The mining platforms around Saturn lasted only a week. Then they came for Mars. The red planet had been humanity's second home for over 100 years. 3 million people lived there. The Convergence killed them all in a single afternoon. Now Earth was gone too. "Admiral," said Captain Elena Vasquez. She was Tanaka's second in command, a strong woman with dark hair and sharp eyes. "The fleet is waiting for orders." Tanaka finally turned away from the screen. She looked at her crew, young men and women in blue uniforms. They were all looking at her. They were all waiting for her to tell them what to do. They were all hoping she had some kind of plan. She did not have a plan. She only had one option left. "How many ships do we have?" she asked. 47, Admiral. 23 civilian transports, 18 cargo vessels, 6 warships, including the Defiance, all damaged, all low on supplies. "And how many people?" Vasquez looked at her tablet. Her hands were shaking. 340,000, give or take. 340,000. Out of 12 billion. That was all that remained of humanity, less than the population of a small city. Tanaka felt something cold settle in her chest. It was not fear. It was not anger. It was something worse. It was the feeling of hope dying. "The Convergence fleet," she asked, "still in Earth orbit. They are harvesting the planet. They have not noticed us yet. We are hidden behind Europa." Europa, one of Jupiter's moons, a ball of ice floating in the darkness. This was where humanity made its last stand, not with weapons or courage, but by hiding like frightened animals. "They will find us soon," Tanaka said. It was not a question. "Yes, Admiral. Our estimates say we have maybe 6 hours before their scouts reach this position." 6 hours. 6 hours to save what was left of the human race. Tanaka walked to the center of the bridge. She looked at the star map on the main table. It showed all of known space. Human colonies were marked in blue. Convergence territory was marked in red. There was so much red now, and almost no blue at all. "Dr. Cole," she said, "come to the bridge immediately." 5 minutes later, a thin man with gray hair and tired eyes walked through the door. Dr. Marcus Cole was 60 years old. He was a physicist, one of the smartest people humanity had ever produced. He had helped design the experimental faster-than-light drive that powered the Defiance. He had spent his whole life studying the mysteries of space and time. Now he looked like a man who had given up. "You wanted to see me, Admiral?" he said. "The FTL drive. Can it get us out of here?" Cole shook his head. The drive was designed for short jumps, a few light years at most. We have never tested it for anything longer. The calculations would be impossible. We could end up anywhere. We could end up inside a star. We could end up in the empty space between galaxies. But it could work? Cole was quiet for a long moment. In theory, yes, it could work. But Admiral, we would be jumping blind. We would have no idea where we are going. We might never find our way back. There is nothing to come back to, Doctor. Those words hung in the air. No one spoke. Everyone on the bridge knew she was right. Earth was gone. Mars was gone. Every human world was gone. There was nothing left in this part of the galaxy except death. "Then what do you suggest?" Cole asked. Tanaka looked at the star map again. She looked at all the red, all the territory the convergence controlled, all the places where humans could no longer go. "We run," she said. "We run as far as we can. We find somewhere the convergence has never been, somewhere they will never look, and we start again. That could take us into unknown space, uncharted regions. We have no idea what is out there." "I know, but we have no choice. It is either the unknown or death." "I choose the unknown." The next 5 hours were chaos. Tanaka gave orders without stopping. The fleet gathered together behind Europa. Engineers worked to repair damaged ships. Doctors treated the wounded. Families said goodbye to each other, not knowing if they would survive the jump. Dr. Cole worked with his team on the FTL calculations. They had never done anything like this before. Normal jumps required exact coordinates. They needed to know exactly where they were going. But this jump would be different. This jump would send them into the darkness, hoping to find light on the other side. "The coordinates are strange," Cole told Tanaka 1 hour before the jump. "The computer is giving me readings I have never seen before. It is almost like something is pulling us in a specific direction." "Pulling us? What do you mean?" "I do not know. It could be a gravitational anomaly. It could be a mistake in our sensors. But the calculations keep pointing to the same location, a region of space between galaxies, a place where there should be nothing at all." "Is it safe?" Cole laughed. It was not a happy sound. "Nothing about this is safe, Admiral. But that location is as good as any other. Maybe better. If there is nothing there, the convergence will have no reason to look for us." Tanaka nodded. "Then that is where we go." 1 hour later, the fleet was ready. 47 ships hung in the darkness above Europa. 340,000 people waited inside them. They were scared. They were tired. They were heartbroken. But they were alive. And as long as they were alive, there was still hope. Or at least, that is what Tanaka told herself. She stood on the bridge of the Defiance and looked at the main screen one last time. Earth was still visible in the distance. A small blue dot, now covered in smoke and fire. Her home, her world, everything she had ever known. "Goodbye," she whispered. Then she gave the order. "All ships, engage FTL drives. Jump on my mark. 3, 2, 1. Mark." Reality tore open. The ships were pulled into a tunnel of light and color. The universe twisted and bent around them. And then everything went wrong. Alarms screamed across the bridge. The ship shook violently. Tanaka grabbed a railing to keep from falling. Around her, crew members were thrown from their seats. Sparks flew from damaged consoles. The lights flickered and died. "What is happening?" she shouted. "The jump is failing," Cole yelled back. His voice was barely audible over the noise. "Something is interfering with the drive. The fleet is scattering. We are losing contact with the other ships." Through the viewport, Tanaka could see other vessels spinning away into the light. Some of them exploded. Some of them simply vanished. The fleet that had been her responsibility, the last hope of humanity, was being torn apart. And then the Defiance was thrown out of the jump. The ship emerged into darkness. Not the darkness of normal space, where stars shone in the distance. This was absolute darkness, total and complete. There was no light anywhere, no stars, no planets, no anything, just the void. Tanaka slowly got to her feet. Her head was bleeding, her arm was broken, but she was alive. She looked around the bridge. Some of her crew were moving, some were not. "Report," she said. Her voice was calm. It had to be calm. If she showed fear now, everything would fall apart. "Heavy damage to all systems," Vasquez said. She was on the floor holding her ribs. "Engines at 30%. Life support stable for now. Communications are down. We cannot reach the other ships." "Where are we?" Cole was at his console, staring at the readings. His face was white. "I do not know. The coordinates make no sense. According to our sensors, we are nowhere. We are in a region of space that should not exist. There are no stars within 100 light years, no galaxies within 1,000,000. We are in the gap between everything, the empty space at the edge of reality." Tanaka walked to the viewport. She looked out at the nothing, the absolute nothing. It pressed against her mind like a weight. She had never known darkness could be so heavy. "Can we jump again?" she asked. "Not without repairs. And even then, I do not know if we could find our way back. We are lost, Admiral. Truly lost." Lost. The word echoed in Tanaka's mind. Lost in the void. Lost with no hope of rescue. Lost while the rest of humanity scattered across the universe. Maybe dead, maybe dying, maybe gone forever. She thought about Earth. She thought about the 12 billion people she had failed to save. She thought about the screams in that final transmission. She thought about everything humanity had been and everything it would never be again. And for the first time in her life, Admiral Yuki Tanaka felt something she had never felt before. She felt hope die, not fade, not weaken, die, completely and totally. There was nothing left, no plan, no escape, no future, just the darkness, pressing in from all sides, swallowing everything. But the Defiance was still there, damaged and broken, but still there. And inside it, 5,000 people were still alive. They were depending on her. They needed her to be strong, even when there was no strength left. So she stood up straight. She wiped the blood from her face. She looked at her crew with eyes that showed nothing of the emptiness she felt inside. "Begin repairs," she said. "We are not dead yet. And as long as we are not dead, we keep fighting. That is what humans do. We fight. We survive. We find a way." The crew nodded. They got to work. They did not know what else to do. And the Defiance drifted on, alone in the endless dark, carrying the last spark of humanity into the void. None of them knew what was waiting for them out there. None of them knew that the darkness was not empty. None of them knew that something ancient and powerful had been watching humanity for a very long time, and that something had just woken up. 3 months had passed since the Defiance fell into the void. 3 months of darkness, 3 months of silence, 3 months of slowly dying hope. Captain Elena Vasquez walked through the lower decks of the ship. The corridors were dim. They had cut power to everything except life support and basic systems. Even the lights were on half power now. Shadows filled every corner, every room, every space where humans tried to live. She passed a group of children sitting in a hallway. They were drawing pictures on the metal floor with pieces of chalk. One girl was drawing a yellow circle with lines coming out of it. "What is that?" Vasquez asked, kneeling down beside her. "The sun," the girl said. She was maybe 7 years old. "My mom told me about it. She said it was a big ball of fire in the sky that kept everyone warm." Vasquez felt something twist in her chest. This child had been born on a transport ship. She had never seen Earth. She had never felt the sun on her face. All she knew was metal walls and recycled air and the endless darkness outside the windows. It was beautiful, Vasquez said softly. The most beautiful thing I ever saw. She stood up and kept walking. There was nothing else she could do. She could not bring back the sun. She could not bring back Earth. She could only keep moving forward, even when forward led nowhere. The ship had become a strange place in these 3 months. People had changed. Some had become quieter, spending their days staring at walls or sleeping as much as possible. Others had become loud and angry, starting fights over small things, over food rations or sleeping spaces, or words spoken in the wrong tone. And some had become something else entirely. Vasquez reached a section of the lower deck that had been sealed off. A guard stood at the door, a young man with tired eyes and a weapon on his hip. "How many today?" she asked. 47 at the last count. They keep coming. We cannot stop them." Vasquez nodded and stepped through the door. Inside was a cargo bay that had been converted into something else. Candles burned everywhere, hundreds of them, their flames flickering in the stale air. People sat in circles on the floor, their heads bowed, their voices rising and falling in a strange chant. At the front of the room stood a man in a white robe, his arms raised toward the ceiling. His name was Father Thomas. He had been a simple engineer before the fall. Now he called himself a prophet. He preached that humanity was already dead, that the void was purgatory, that they were being judged for their sins, and only through suffering could they earn a second chance at life. "Captain Vasquez," he said, lowering his arms. His voice was calm and smooth. "Have you come to join us at last?" "I have come to check on my crew. These people should be at their stations, helping with repairs. These people have found peace, something you cannot give them, something your admiral cannot give them. Only the void can judge us now, Captain. Only the darkness can show us the way." Vasquez looked at the people sitting on the floor. She recognized many of them: engineers, doctors, teachers, parents, good people who had worked hard and followed orders. Now they sat here in this makeshift temple, waiting for a salvation that would never come. "We will find a way out of this," she said. "We always have." Father Thomas smiled. It was not a kind smile. "You still believe in the old ways, Captain, in ships and science and human cleverness. But look where that cleverness brought us. Look at the darkness outside your windows. We have reached the end of all things. The only way forward is to accept it." Vasquez wanted to argue. She wanted to tell him he was wrong, but a small part of her wondered if he was right. 3 months in the void had worn her down. 3 months of nothing had made her question everything she believed. She left without another word. On the bridge, Admiral Tanaka sat in her chair and stared at data screens that showed nothing. The sensors swept in all directions, searching for something, anything, that might give them hope. But there was only emptiness, only the void. She had not slept properly in weeks. Dark circles ringed her eyes. Her uniform hung loose on her body because she had stopped eating regular meals. She spent every hour studying the readings from their failed jump, trying to understand what had gone wrong, trying to find a way to fix it. "Admiral," Vasquez said, stepping onto the bridge, "you need to rest." "I will rest when I find a way out of this." "You cannot find anything if you are too tired to think." Tanaka finally looked up. Her eyes were haunted. "Do you know what I dream about, Captain, when I manage to sleep? I dream about Earth. I dream about standing on a beach, feeling the wind on my face, hearing the waves. And then I wake up and remember it is all gone. Everything is gone, and we are trapped here in this nothing, and I cannot save anyone. You saved 340,000 people. You got us out before the convergence killed us all. And brought them here? To this?" Tanaka laughed bitterly. "Some salvation? We escaped one death only to find another, a slower one, a lonelier one. Before Vasquez could respond, Dr. Cole rushed onto the bridge. He was carrying a tablet, and his eyes were wide with excitement. It was the first time she had seen him look anything other than defeated in months. Admiral! Captain! You need to see this! What is it? Tanaka asked, standing up. I have been studying our sensor readings for weeks, trying to understand this place. The void is not supposed to exist. There should be some background radiation, some trace of cosmic energy, something. But there is nothing. It is like the universe simply ends here. We know this already, Doctor. Yes, but that is not what I found. Look at this. He held up the tablet, showing a graph filled with strange patterns. I started looking at the quantum level, the smallest possible measurements, and I found something. The void is not empty, it is structured. Structured? Vasquez said. What do you mean? I mean, someone built this place, or something. The patterns in the quantum foam, they are not random. They are organized, designed. This region of space was created on purpose. Tanaka grabbed the tablet and studied it. Her hands were shaking. That is impossible. No one has the technology to create something like this. Not humans. Not the convergence. No one. Not anyone we know. But the universe is very old, Admiral. Billions of years before humanity existed, other civilizations rose and fell. Who knows what they might have built? A spark of something lit up in Tanaka's eyes. It might have been hope. It might have been madness. At this point, it was hard to tell the difference. Can you trace the structure? Find where it leads? I am trying, but our sensors are damaged. I need more power to get accurate readings. And there is something else. Cole hesitated. The patterns respond to us. Respond? How? When I run certain scans, the patterns change. It is like something is watching us, waiting for us to do something. A chill ran through the bridge. The crew exchanged nervous glances. The idea of being watched in this empty place was somehow worse than being alone. What does it want? Vasquez asked. I do not know, but I have an idea about how to find out. Cole explained his theory. The quantum patterns seem to respond to biological signatures, human DNA specifically. He believed that if they could interface directly with the ship's systems using human biological material, they might be able to communicate with whatever was out there. That sounds dangerous, Tanaka said. Everything is dangerous now, Admiral, but this might be our only chance. They spent the next 2 weeks preparing. Cole modified a console in the engineering section, adding biological sensors and neural interfaces. The crew debated who should be the one to try it. Volunteers stepped forward. Arguments broke out. In the end, it was a young engineer named Jin Park who made the decision for them. Jin was 23 years old. She had been working on one of the damaged consoles when she cut her hand on a broken component. Blood dripped onto the exposed circuits, and something incredible happened. The entire ship lit up. Screens that had been dark for months suddenly blazed with light. Symbols appeared everywhere, strange shapes and patterns that no human had ever seen. The engines hummed with new power. Systems that had been dead came back to life, and a voice spoke through the speakers. It was not a human voice. It was not even really a voice. It was more like a feeling, a presence that somehow formed words in their minds. You have come. We have waited. So long we have waited. Jin stood frozen at her console. Her bleeding hands still pressed against the metal. Her eyes were wide and glowing with strange light. When she spoke, it was not her voice that came out. The lost ones always find their way here. The broken ones. The hopeless ones. This is what we built. A place for those who have nothing left. A refuge in the endless dark. Who are you? Tanaka demanded. What is this place? We were called the architects. We built this place when your ancestors were still learning to walk. We saw the pattern of the universe. Young species rise, Old species fear them. War comes, extinction follows. It has happened a million times. It will happen a million more. Why did you bring us here? We did not bring you. You brought yourselves. Your despair called out across the void, and the threshold answered. This is what it was designed to do. To catch the falling, to shelter the broken, to give new chances to those who have lost everything. The symbols on the screens shifted and changed. They formed a map showing a structure deep in the void. It was huge, kilometers wide, shaped like nothing humanity had ever imagined. The threshold station, the voice said through Jin. Come, find what the architects left behind. Find the gift we made for species like yours. But be warned, the gift has a price, and once you see it, you can never go back to what you were. Then the light faded. Jin collapsed to the floor, unconscious but alive. The screens went dark again, except for one. On that screen, a set of coordinates blinked steadily, a destination. For a long moment, no one spoke. They had come to the void looking for escape. They had expected to find nothing. Instead, they had found something impossible, something ancient, something that had been waiting for them since before humanity existed. What do we do? Vasquez asked quietly. Tanaka stared at the coordinates. The spark in her eyes had grown into something stronger, not quite hope, but something close to it. We go, she said. We find this station. We see what the architects left for us. It could be a trap. It could be salvation. Either way, we have nothing left to lose. The Defiance changed course, turning toward the coordinates on the screen. Behind them, the darkness stretched on forever. Ahead of them, something waited. Something ancient. Something that might hold the key to humanity's survival or its final destruction. Jin Park woke up 3 hours later. She remembered nothing of what had happened. But she could feel something different inside her. A connection to the void. A whisper at the edge of her thoughts. And deep in the darkness, something stirred. The architects had slept for billions of years, waiting for a species worthy of their gift. Now they had found one. But whether humanity would prove worthy remained to be seen. The void was not empty after all. It was a test, and humanity had just begun to take it. The threshold station hung in the darkness like a dream made solid. It was not built like anything humans had ever seen. There were no straight lines, no simple shapes, no familiar patterns. The structure twisted and curved in ways that hurt the eyes. Parts of it seemed to exist in more than 3 dimensions. Looking at it for too long gave people headaches. Captain Elena Vasquez stood at the viewport of the shuttle, staring at the station as they approached. Behind her sat a team of 20 volunteers, scientists, engineers, soldiers. The best the Defiance had left. They had trained for this mission for 3 days, but nothing could really prepare them for what they were about to find. Admiral Tanaka had wanted to come herself. Vasquez had refused to allow it. You are too important, she had told the Admiral. If something goes wrong in there, humanity needs you to survive. I will lead the team. Tanaka had argued. She had ordered. In the end, she had accepted. But her last words to Vasquez had been heavy with meaning. Find out what the architects left for us. Find out if it can save our people. And Elena, be careful. We cannot afford to lose you. Now, as the shuttle entered a massive opening in the station's hull, Vasquez wondered if careful was even possible in a place like this. The landing bay was enormous. 100 human ships could have fit inside with room to spare. Strange lights glowed from the walls, soft and blue, bright enough to see by but not bright enough to hurt. The air was breathable. The temperature was comfortable. Everything was designed for living beings, even though no living thing had walked here in billions of years. Spread out, Vasquez ordered as the team left the shuttle. Stay in contact. Report everything you see. The station was not empty. That was the first thing they discovered. As they moved deeper into the structure, they found evidence of other species. Not alive, but they had been here once. Artwork covered some walls, showing strange creatures in unfamiliar stars. Technology lay scattered in rooms, devices that no one understood, and bones. So many bones. "Over here," called Dr. Cole. He was standing in a large chamber filled with glass cases. Inside each case was a skeleton of a different species. Some were small, barely bigger than a cat. Others were huge, with massive skulls and thick bones. All of them were clearly intelligent. All of them had built civilizations, and all of them had come here to die. "What is this place?" someone whispered. "A museum," Cole said quietly, "or a memorial. These are the species who found the threshold before us. Look at the plaques." Each case had a small metal plate with symbols on it. As Vasquez watched, the symbols shifted and changed, forming words she could read. The Keth, destroyed by the Vorn Alliance. 4.2 billion years ago, population at extinction, 89 billion. The Singing Minds of Althar, destroyed by the Machine Collective. 3.7 billion years ago, population at extinction, 340 billion. The Union of Nine Worlds, destroyed by the Silence, 2.1 billion years ago. Population at extinction, 12 trillion. Case after case, species after species, civilizations that had risen, flourished, and been destroyed by others who feared them. The pattern repeated hundreds of times across billions of years. Young species grow powerful. Old species feel threatened. War comes. Death follows. Vasquez felt sick. Was this humanity's fate? To become another display in this endless gallery of the dead? "Keep moving," she said. "There has to be more than this." They walked for hours through the station. The deeper they went, the stranger things became. Rooms that seemed to exist in multiple places at once. Corridors that looped back on themselves. Time felt different here, sometimes moving fast and sometimes moving slow. Finally, they reached the center of the station. It was a chamber so large that Vasquez could not see the far wall. In the middle stood a pillar of light, stretching up into darkness. And within the light floated a shape. It was hard to look at directly. It kept changing, shifting between forms, sometimes looking like a machine, and sometimes looking like something alive. "Welcome," said a voice. It came from everywhere and nowhere. It was the same presence that had spoken through Jin Park on the Defiance, but stronger here, clearer. "I am the custodian. I was created to guard the threshold and to guide those who find it." "What are you?" Vasquez asked. "A computer? An artificial intelligence?" "I am what remains of the architects. They poured their knowledge, their memories, their very essence into me before they passed away. I am their legacy, and I am here to help you if you choose to accept that help." Why? Why would beings who lived billions of years ago want to help humanity? The custodian's form shifted again. For a moment, it almost looked sad. Because the architects made a terrible mistake. They discovered the secret to ending war, to stopping the cycle of destruction that claims every young species. They created a technology that could change everything, but they could not agree on how to use it. They fought among themselves. They tore their own civilization apart. In the end, they built the threshold as their final act, a place where future species might succeed where they failed. "What technology?" Cole asked. His voice was hungry with scientific curiosity. "What did they discover?" The pillar of light pulsed. New images formed in the air around them. Complex diagrams and mathematical formulas, biological structures and energy patterns. The architects learned to understand consciousness itself, not just the brain, but the fundamental nature of thought and feeling and choice. They learned how to read it, how to map it, and how to change it. Change it how? In any way desired. They could remove fear. They could add understanding. They could take a mind filled with hatred and transform it into a mind filled with love. They could reach into the deepest parts of any sentient being and reshape what they found there. Vasquez felt a chill run down her spine. You are talking about mind control. No, the custodian said. Mind control forces a being to act against its will. This is different. This changes what the being wills. There is no conflict because there is no resistance. The subject does not obey commands. The subject simply becomes someone who wants what you want them to want. The chamber was silent. Everyone was thinking the same thing, imagining what such power could do, imagining what it could mean. That is why the convergence attacked us, Cole said slowly. They feared what we might become. They saw our potential and wanted to destroy it before we grew too strong. Yes, it is the old pattern, the endless cycle. But with this technology, the cycle can be broken. How? Vasquez asked. You could return to your enemies. You could use the technology on them. You could remove the fear and hatred that drives them to kill. You could transform the convergence from destroyers into friends, not through force, not through war, but through understanding, through changing what they are at the deepest level. The images in the air showed scenes of peace, former enemies working together, worlds being rebuilt, children playing without fear. It looked like paradise, but Vasquez had spent enough years in the military to know that paradise always had a price. What happens to free will, she asked. If you change someone's mind without their consent, are they still themselves? The custodian was quiet for a long moment. That is the question the architects could not answer. That is why they destroyed themselves. Some believed the technology was a gift that should be used to end all suffering. Others believed it was a weapon worse than any bomb or plague. They could not agree, and so they fought. And in fighting, they proved that even the wisest species can be consumed by the same violence they hope to end. So this is the gift, Cole said. Technology that can save us or destroy us, depending on how we use it? Yes, the threshold is not a weapon factory. It is not a place of easy answers. It is a test. Every species that comes here must choose their own path. Some have used the technology to heal their enemies and find peace. Some have used it to enslave their enemies and build empires. Some have refused to use it at all and returned to face their fate with clean hands. What happened to them? The ones who refused. They died. All of them. The universe is not kind to those who will not fight. Jin Park stepped forward. Since landing on the station, she had been quiet, listening, watching. But something in her eyes had changed. She looked older now, wiser. The connection she had formed with the void had grown stronger here, near the custodian. You said the architects could not agree, she said, that they destroyed themselves arguing over how to use their gift, but they had billions of years to think about it. What makes you believe we can do better? The custodian's form shifted again. This time it looked almost human, a figure made of light, with 2 arms and 2 legs and something that might have been a face. I do not believe anything. I only watch, I only guide. The choice is yours. I can teach you how to use the technology. I can give you the knowledge the architects gathered over millions of years. What you do with that knowledge is not my decision. It never has been. The team spent days learning from the custodian. They studied the architect's technology. They practiced with small demonstrations. They watched recordings of other species who had come before, seeing their triumphs and their failures. When they finally returned to the Defiance, they carried more than just knowledge. They carried a choice, a terrible, wonderful, impossible choice that would determine the future of humanity. Admiral Tanaka listened to their report in silence. When they finished, she did not speak for a long time. She sat in her chair, staring at nothing, thinking thoughts that no one else could see. So we can defeat the convergence, she said finally. We can end the war. We can ensure that humanity survives. Yes, Admiral, Vasquez said, but the cost is their free will, their right to choose who they want to be. We would not be defeating our enemies. We would be erasing them, replacing them with something that looks the same but thinks differently. Some would call that mercy, Tanaka laughed bitterly, and some would call it the greatest crime in history. To take away someone's choice, even to save them, even to make them better. Is that not exactly what the convergence wanted to do to us? They called us a disease. They wanted to cleanse the galaxy. How are we different if we do the same thing with kindness instead of violence? There was no good answer. There never had been. The architects had struggled with this question for millions of years and never found a solution. Now humanity had inherited their burden, and somewhere in the darkness, the custodian waited, watching, judging, ready to guide humanity down whatever path they chose. The gift had been given, the test had begun. Now everything depended on what humanity decided to do with the power they had been granted. 6 months had passed since the discovery of the Threshold Station. In that time, everything had changed. The human fleet had slowly gathered at the station. Ships that had been scattered during the failed jump found their way through the void, guided by signals that Jin Park learned to send through the quantum structure of space. 23 vessels eventually arrived, 127,000 survivors, the last of humanity, floating in the darkness between galaxies. They had set up a council to govern themselves. Representatives from each ship met every week in the Great Chamber at the center of the Threshold Station, arguing about supplies and rationing and repairs. But everyone knew these discussions were just avoiding the real question. What would humanity do with the architect's gift? The debate had split the survivors into three groups. They called themselves factions now, though no one had planned for it to happen that way. It had grown naturally as people with similar beliefs found each other and organized. Dr. Marcus Cole led the first group. They called themselves the Reborn. The technology exists, Cole argued at every council meeting. We cannot pretend it does not. The convergence destroyed our home, killed billions of our people, and would finish us off if they ever found us here. We have the power to stop them, not with weapons, but with understanding. We can heal them. We can remove the fear and hatred that drives them. We can create peace. His followers agreed. They were mostly scientists and doctors, people who had dedicated their lives to helping others. They saw the architect's technology as medicine for a sick galaxy. The convergence was not evil, they argued. The aliens were simply afraid of what they did not understand. Fear could be cured. Hatred could be healed. All they had to do was be brave enough to try. Captain Elena Vasquez led the second group. They called themselves the Preservers. What you are proposing is not healing, Vasquez said in response. It is violation. You want to reach into the minds of sentient beings and change who they are without their consent. That is not medicine. That is slavery by another name. If we do this, we become exactly what the convergence accused us of being: a threat, a danger, a species that should be feared. Her followers were a mix of soldiers and civilians, people who believed in freedom and choice above all else. They argued that humanity should leave the architect's gift alone, find a new home in some distant galaxy, start over without the burden of this terrible power. Let the convergence have their victory if they wanted it. Some things were worse than losing. Admiral Yuki Tanaka led the third group. They called themselves the Reclaimers. She had changed in the months since arriving at the station. The despair that had consumed her after Earth's fall had transformed into something else, something harder, something darker. She had studied the architect's technology more deeply than anyone else, spending long nights with the custodian, learning secrets that she shared with no one. The convergence did not show us mercy, she said at the council meetings. Her voice was cold now, without the warmth it had once held. They did not ask permission before they burned our cities. They did not worry about consent when they murdered our children. They saw us as vermin, pests to be exterminated. And you want us to heal them? To make them our friends? Her eyes burned with something that made people look away. No, we should use this power to make them understand what they did. Make them feel every death they caused. Make them worship the species they tried to destroy. And then make them destroy themselves, the way they destroyed us. That would be justice. That would be fair. Her followers were mostly those who had lost the most. Parents who had watched their children die. Soldiers who had seen their friends burned alive. People whose grief had turned to rage and whose rage demanded payment. They wanted revenge, and Tanaka promised it to them. The council meetings grew more heated as the weeks passed. Arguments turned into shouting matches. Shouting matches turned into fights. Security had to separate people more than once. And then the violence began. It started with small things. Someone from the reborn faction found their quarters vandalized. A preserver was attacked in a corridor by unknown assailants. A reclaimer discovered poison in their food. The three factions began to separate physically, moving to different ships, avoiding each other, watching each other with suspicious eyes. Jin Park watched it all with growing horror. She had become something more than human in her months at the station. The custodian had taught her things that no one else could understand. She could feel the quantum structure of space like a second heartbeat. She could sense the emotions of people around her, their fears and hopes and hatreds. And she could feel humanity tearing itself apart. This is what happened to the architects, she told Vasquez one night. They were alone on the observation deck of the Defiance, looking out at the station floating in the darkness. They found this power and could not agree on how to use it. They formed factions just like we have. They argued and fought and eventually destroyed each other. How do we stop it? Vasquez asked. I do not know if we can. The custodian says we have to choose our own path. But I am starting to understand why the architects built this place. The technology is not really the test. The test is what we become when we have to decide whether to use it. The breaking point came 3 weeks later. Admiral Tanaka attempted to seize control of the station. She had been planning it for months, gathering loyal followers, positioning them in key locations, waiting for the right moment. That moment came when Dr. Cole announced that he had figured out how to modify the architect's technology to work on a massive scale. One pulse, broadcast from the station's central core, could reach across light years. It could affect every mind in the Convergence home system at once. This is our chance, Cole said excitedly at the emergency council meeting. We can end the war with a single action. No more fighting, no more death, just peace. And who decides what kind of peace? Vasquez demanded. Who decides what thoughts are acceptable and which ones need to be erased? You? The council? Some committee? The technology can be calibrated precisely. We would only remove the aggressive instincts, the xenophobic drives. Everything else would remain intact. And how do you know that? How do you know you will not destroy their entire civilization by accident, or turn them into mindless slaves, or create some new horror we cannot even imagine? While they argued, Tanaka made her move. Her followers had already taken control of the station's security systems. Armed soldiers loyal to her appeared in the council chamber, weapons drawn. Tanaka herself stepped forward, her face calm and cold. Enough talk, she said. We have debated long enough. Earth is gone. Billions are dead. And you stand here arguing about ethics while our enemies rebuild their fleets. I will not allow it any longer. Yuki, Vasquez said carefully, her hand moving toward her weapon. Think about what you are doing. I have thought about nothing else for 6 months. The reborn want to heal our enemies. The preservers want to run away. Neither option gives our dead the justice they deserve. Only I am willing to do what must be done. What you are planning is not justice. It is genocide. It is survival. It is revenge. It is the only response that makes sense in a universe where the strong destroy the weak. The architects were fools. They had the power to rule the galaxy, and instead they destroyed themselves arguing about morality. I will not make their mistake. She raised her hand to signal her troops. But Jin Park was faster. The young engineer had been standing in the corner of the chamber, quiet and unnoticed. Now she stepped forward, and the air around her began to glow. Energy crackled across her skin. The quantum structure of space bent and twisted in response to her will. "You cannot do this," she said. Her voice echoed strangely, carrying harmonics that should not have been possible. "The custodian will not allow it, the station will not allow it, and I will not allow it." Tanaka stared at her. "You? You are just a girl. You have no authority here." "No, but I have understanding. The architects gave me their memories. I know what happened to them. I know every mistake they made. And I know that what you want will destroy humanity just as surely as it destroyed them." For a long moment, no one moved. The soldiers looked uncertain. Their weapons wavered. They had been loyal to Tanaka, but this was something they had not expected, something that frightened them. Then Tanaka drew her own weapon and pointed it at Jin. "Stand down, child. I do not want to hurt you, but I will not be stopped. Not when we are so close." Jin did not move. "You think you want revenge. You think you want justice. But I can feel what you really want, Admiral. I can feel it burning inside you. You want to die. You have wanted to die since Earth fell. You just want to take the convergence with you." Something flickered in Tanaka's eyes. Pain, recognition, the truth she had been hiding even from herself. "You know nothing about what I want. I know everything. The guilt is eating you alive. You think you failed humanity. You think you should have died with the billions on Earth. And now you are trying to find a worthy death, a death with meaning, even if it means destroying everything we have left." Tears were streaming down Tanaka's face now, though she probably did not realize it. Her hand was shaking. The weapon wavered. "They were my responsibility," she whispered. 12 billion people, and I could not save them. No one could have saved them. The convergence was too strong, but you saved us. You saved over 100,000 people. And if you do this, if you let your grief drive you to madness, you will have killed them just as surely as the convergence did." The chamber was completely silent. Every eye was on the Admiral. Every breath was held, and then Tanaka lowered her weapon. It was not surrender. It was collapse. The strength went out of her all at once, and she fell to her knees sobbing. Months of grief and guilt and rage poured out of her in a flood that could no longer be held back. Vasquez moved quickly. She disarmed the Admiral's soldiers, secured the room, took control of the situation, but her eyes kept returning to the broken woman on the floor. Yuki Tanaka had been one of the strongest people she had ever known. Now she was just another victim of a war that had taken everything from everyone. The council met again the next day. Tanaka was under guard in the medical bay, sedated for her own protection. Her faction had scattered, many of them ashamed of what they had almost done. The crisis had passed, but the question remained. What would humanity do with the architect's gift? Jin Park spoke at that meeting. She told them what she had learned from the custodian, from the memories of the architects, from her own connection to the quantum structure of reality. "There is a fourth option," she said, "one the architects never considered because they were too proud to imagine it. We do not have to use the technology to conquer our enemies. We do not have to refuse to use it at all. We can use it to understand them, to show them who we really are, to give them a choice." "Explain," Cole said. "The convergence fears us because they do not know us. They see humans as a threat because that is all their history has taught them. Young species rise, grow powerful, and eventually attack older species. It has happened countless times. They are acting out of fear, not evil. So we heal that fear. That is what I have been saying all along. No, healing without consent is still violation. But there is another way. Instead of changing what the convergence thinks, we can show them what we think. We can share our memories, our hopes, our dreams. We can let them experience humanity from the inside. And then we can give them a choice. Fear us or trust us, hate us or accept us, but let it be their choice, made with full understanding. The council debated for hours. There were objections and concerns and arguments. But in the end, they agreed. Not unanimously, but by enough of a majority to move forward. Humanity would not conquer its enemies. It would not flee from them. It would face them with open minds and offer something no species in the galaxy had ever offered before. Understanding, freely given, without conditions. It was a risk. It might not work. The convergence might reject the offer and destroy them anyway. But at least humanity would face its fate, having remained true to its best nature. Jin Park looked out at the assembled survivors and felt something she had not felt in a long time. Hope. Real hope. Not the desperate hope of people running from death, but the quiet hope of people who had found something worth living for. Something worth dying for, if it came to that. The architects had failed because they could not choose. They had torn themselves apart arguing about power and morality and the right way to use their gift. Humanity had found another way, a harder way, a way that required courage and faith and the willingness to risk everything on a single act of trust. Now they just had to survive long enough to try it. 4 years had passed since the fall of Earth. 4 years of preparation, 4 years of learning, 4 years of becoming something new. The UNS Defiance emerged from a tear in reality above the convergence capital world. It came alone, a single human vessel entering the heart of enemy territory. On any other day, in any other time, it would have been suicide. But this was not any other day. The ship began broadcasting immediately. A simple message, repeated in every language the convergence had ever used, and in every human language as well. We remember, we forgive, we return. Admiral Elena Vasquez stood on the bridge, watching the sensors light up with approaching vessels. The convergence fleet was scrambling. Thousands of ships powered up their weapons. Defense platforms locked onto the Defiance. In moments, they would have enough firepower aimed at her to destroy a planet. She did not order evasive action. She did not raise shields. She simply stood there calm and ready as the moment of truth approached. "Admiral," said her communications officer, "we are receiving messages from the Convergence Command. They are demanding our surrender." "Ignore them. Continue the broadcast. The fleet is almost in weapons range." "I know. Hold position." Behind her, Jin Park sat in a modified chair at the center of the bridge. Cables connected her to the ship's systems and, through them, to the architect's technology that hummed in the Defiance's core. Her eyes were closed. Her breathing was slow and deep. She was waiting for the right moment. The years since the crisis at the threshold had changed her. She was no longer the young engineer who had accidentally connected with an alien AI. Now she was something else, something new. A bridge between human consciousness and the quantum fabric of reality itself. The custodian had called her a threshold walker, the first human to truly understand what the architects had created. She had spent those 4 years learning to use the gift without abusing it, to share understanding without forcing change, to offer connection without demanding surrender. It had been the hardest thing she had ever done, but she was ready now. They all were. "Weapons range in 30 seconds, the tactical officer reported. Vasquez looked at the main screen. The convergence fleet filled the display. beautiful ships, she had to admit. Elegant designs that spoke of a civilization thousands of years older than humanity. A civilization that had seen young species rise and fall again and again, and had learned only one lesson from that history: kill them before they kill you. Today, humanity would try to teach them a different lesson. Jin, Vasquez said quietly, are you ready? Yes. Then do it. Jin Park opened her eyes. They glowed with soft light, the same light that had filled them in the threshold chamber so long ago. She reached out with her mind, touching the ship's systems, touching the architect's technology, touching the quantum structure of space itself. And then she released the pulse. It spread outward from the Defiance like ripples in a pond. Invisible energy washing over the Convergence fleet, over the defense platforms, over the capital world below. It moved at the speed of light, reaching across the entire system in seconds. The weapons did not fire. On every ship, in every station, on every world in the system, the people of the Convergence felt something they had never experienced before. They felt human, not controlled, not changed, just understood. For a single moment that stretched into eternity, every Convergence citizen experienced the memories of humanity. They saw children playing in green fields under a yellow sun. They felt the love of parents holding newborn babies. They heard music and poetry and laughter and tears. They experienced the fear humans felt when the Convergence ships first appeared in their skies, and the despair when those ships began to destroy everything they loved. They felt what it was like to watch their world burn. And in that moment, something broke. Not their minds, not their will, just the fear, the ancient, terrible fear that had driven them to commit genocide against a species they had never truly understood. The fear melted away, replaced by something else: recognition. They were not so different after all. The Convergence had once been young too. They had once been afraid of the universe. They had once loved their children and dreamed of the future and hoped for a better tomorrow. They had simply forgotten, over the long millennia, what it felt like to be new, to be fragile, to need protection instead of providing it. Now they remembered. Admiral Vasquez watched the sensor readings change. The weapons that had been pointed at her ship were powering down. The fleet that had been racing to destroy her was slowing, stopping, drifting aimlessly as the beings inside struggled to process what they had just experienced. We are receiving a transmission, her communications officer said. His voice was shaking. From the Convergence High Council. Put it through. The screen flickered. A face appeared. It was alien, with features that no human could read easily. But Vasquez had spent 4 years learning about the Convergence. She could see the emotion there, the shock, the confusion, the beginning of something that might have been shame. Why? The Convergence leader asked. Its voice was rough with something that might have been tears. After what we did to you, after we destroyed your world, killed your people, why would you show us this? Why would you share your pain with us instead of using your weapon to make us suffer? Vasquez stepped forward. She had practiced this moment 1,000 times. But the words that came out were not the ones she had planned. Because suffering does not end suffering. Because revenge does not bring back the dead. Because we had a choice between becoming monsters or remaining human, and we chose to remain human. Even after everything you took from us. We do not understand. We feared you because you were dangerous. And now you have proven how dangerous you truly are. You could have used this power to enslave us, to destroy us. Why did you not? Because that would have made us exactly what you feared, a species that uses power to dominate others. We did not come here to conquer you. We came here to ask you a question. What question? Vasquez took a deep breath. This was the moment. the turning point. Everything humanity had suffered, everything they had sacrificed came down to this. Now that you know who we really are, now that you have felt what we felt, what do you want to do? Do you still want to destroy us? Do you still see us as a disease to be wiped out? Or do you see something else now? Something you did not see before? The Convergence leader was silent for a long time. Behind it, other figures gathered, military officers and political leaders and religious authorities. The entire ruling structure of a galactic civilization, forced to confront a truth they had spent millennia avoiding. Finally, the leader spoke. We see ourselves. We see what we have become. Murderers, destroyers. We told ourselves we were protecting the galaxy, but we were only protecting our own fear. We have committed crimes that can never be forgiven. We have done evil in the name of safety. Yes, Vasquez said simply, you have. And yet you offer us understanding instead of punishment. You show us mercy we did not earn and do not deserve. Why? Because someone has to be first. Someone has to break the cycle. The architects who built the technology we used, they failed because they could not agree on how to use it. They destroyed themselves arguing about power and morality. We chose a different path. We chose to offer a hand instead of a fist. We chose to give you the same chance that was given to us. What chance? The chance to be better, to grow past your fear, to become something new. That is all we ask. Not that you surrender, not that you obey, just that you consider the possibility that we do not have to be enemies, that there is another way. The leader turned to the others behind it. Words were exchanged in the Convergence language, too fast and complex for the translator to catch. Arguments flared. Voices rose. For a moment, Vasquez thought it would fall apart. The fear would win. The old patterns would reassert themselves. Then the leader turned back to the screen. We have committed genocide against your species. We have destroyed your homeworld. We have killed billions of your people. If our positions were reversed, we would demand revenge. We would accept nothing less than the complete annihilation of those who had wronged us. Why do you not demand the same? Because we want to build something new, not for us. We are only 100,000 now. Too few to rebuild Earth. Too few to rebuild our civilization alone. But maybe with help, we could build something better. Something that includes both our peoples. Something that breaks the cycle once and for all. You would share your future with us, after everything? If you are willing, the choice is yours. We cannot force peace. We can only offer it. Silence stretched across the void between ships. The fate of two civilizations hung in the balance. And then slowly, the Convergence leader did something no human had ever seen a Convergence do before. It bowed its head. We have much to discuss, it said. Much to answer for. Much to decide. But this we can promise. The killing is over. Whatever comes next, we will not fire another shot at your people. You have given us a gift we do not yet know how to receive, but we will try to be worthy of it. Behind Vasquez, the bridge crew let out a breath they had been holding for 4 years. It was not peace. Not yet. Peace would take decades of work, of negotiation, of slowly building trust between species who had every reason to hate each other. There would be setbacks and failures and moments when the old fear tried to return. But it was a beginning. The Defiance hung in space above the Convergence capital world. A single ship, 100,000 survivors. The last remnant of a species that had lost everything and somehow found the strength to offer forgiveness instead of vengeance. Jin Park disconnected from the ship's systems. She was exhausted, drained in ways that went beyond the physical. But she was also smiling. It worked, she said softly. It actually worked. Vasquez walked over to her. The Admiral, promoted after Tanaka's breakdown 2 years before, had never expected to see this moment. She had prepared herself for death, for failure, for one last stand against impossible odds. She had not prepared herself for hope. The custodian contacted me, Jin said, just now through the quantum link. It said, it said the architects would have been proud and afraid. Afraid of what? Of us. Of what we might become. It said we are the first species to walk the narrow path, the first to use the technology without being corrupted by it, the first to break the cycle. What does that mean? It means we are on our own now. The threshold was never meant to be a permanent home. It was a nursery for dying species, a place to grow until they were ready to face the universe again. The custodian said we have graduated. The nursery's closed. Whatever we build from here, we build ourselves. Vasquez looked out at the stars. So many stars, so many worlds, so many possibilities. Then we had better get started, she said. The next few months were a blur of negotiations and treaties and carefully built agreements. The Convergence, true to their word, did not fire another shot. They provided assistance to the human survivors, helping them establish a new colony on a world that had been designated for destruction before the change of heart. Not everyone accepted the new peace. Some Convergence hardliners refused to believe the threat was over. Some human survivors could not forgive what had been done to Earth. There were tensions and conflicts and difficult conversations, but slowly, painfully, something new began to grow. A year after the Defiance's appearance above the capital world, the first Joint Council met. Human and Convergence representatives sitting together, working together, building something that neither species could have built alone. 5 years later, the first children were born on the colony world. Children who would grow up knowing both species. Children who would never fear the stars because they had friends among them. 10 years after that, a memorial was built on the site where Earth had once orbited. A monument to the 12 billion who had died. A reminder of what fear and hatred could cost. And a promise that it would never happen again. Jin Park attended the ceremony. She was older now, her hair gray, her body showing the wear of a life spent bridging impossible gaps. But her eyes were still bright with the light of the threshold. We remember, she said to the gathered crowd of humans and Convergence, the same words the Defiance had broadcast so long ago. We forgive. We remain. The cycle was broken. The pattern that had claimed billions of species across billions of years was finally ended. Not through force or conquest or the domination of superior power, but through understanding, through courage, through the simple, terrifying choice to be better than fear demanded. Humanity had lost everything, their home, their history, almost everyone they had ever loved. They had been broken and scattered and driven to the edge of extinction. And from that edge, they had emerged not as conquerors or victims, but as something new, something the galaxy had never seen before, a species that chose hope when hope seemed impossible, a species that offered forgiveness when vengeance was their right, a species that faced the endless dark and found within it the light to change everything. The architect's gift had been a test, not of power or technology, but of character. Humanity had passed, and the stars would never be the same.